Forces of the tectonic plates is pushing up the Sierra Nevada mountains. There's the Sierra foothills, which are a huge amount of granite. You compare to a place like the Central Coast, that it has the seabed soils, that the North American plate is acting almost like a bulldozer, scraping the top off the Pacific plate that is going down underneath it. And those form the coastal mountains and most of the soils in the Central Coast. Then the North Coast, where you have a melange. The seabed soils and the sedimentary soils have combined together, and that is what you usually find in the North Coast. This one comes from fairly ripe grapes, and so you do get a little color from the grapes, but there hasn't been a lot of wood influence on this wine. It has been aged in a barrel, but for a shorter period of time, whereas this wine has been in the barrel longer and has extracted more color from the barrel. It's gone through the malolactic fermentation. It has the smells of the lees. This has a lot of characteristics that were derived from the winemaking process. So these are really two different types of wines. The maritime climate in California's Central Coast does give you that pineapple-y fruit characteristic. The fruitiness of a Sonoma wine would often be described as more of a citrus characteristic. You can take a wine that's very attractive when it's 2 and 3 years old because of the rich fruitiness, but over time, there will develop additional smell that wasn't there in the beginning, that isn't the fruitiness that comes from the gradual oxidation in the bottle. And this is an example of a Chardonnay which is aged very attractively, but it had plenty of acid to begin with, and it has now developed this harmonious melding of the winemaker influences. There's not a whole lot of fruit left, but there is now this tremendous bouquet. This is a wine that has not aged well. It didn't have enough acid, and so it's become oxidized, and you can see from the color it's gone way too far. White Burgundies require that development to show the full potential of the wine, so they're not nearly as good at age 3 as they will be at age 7. California introduced the concept of fruit into Chardonnay. Being, in general, a warmer climate, the grapes will start to push buds towards the end of February, early March, meaning that they had a 2-month jump on the Burgundy grapes. That hang time of the grapes on the vine meant that you got a very deep, round fruitiness, a juiciness, and that sort of pineapple characteristic became the hallmark of California Chardonnay. So here we are in the Berkeley Hills. I'm with Foster Goldstrom, who's an art dealer, art collector. Foster has owned this Bernard Maybeck house for 35 years, and it's just a wonderful place to come and do this Chardonnay tasting. And we're maintaining that the one from Santa Barbara County is going to have more of that Central Coast character, that it should be rounder and fruitier, and we anticipate that the one from Sonoma will be a little bit more stiletto-like, a sort of longer, thinner profile, perhaps with more minerality to it. So let's go ahead and try them.
Well, first of all, it has a very, very nice nose. Very, very elegant.
The thing about the Central Coast is that because it's on the Pacific plate, you not only have the cooler climate with the coastal influence, but you also have a lot of those seabed soils, which give you a somewhat higher pH, and I think make the wines seem a little more soft and inviting when they're young. But mostly, I think it's that big, round, fruity character.
It is huge nose of aromatic flavors that just come flying out of the glass.
And you would never expect that from a European Chardonnay, would you?
No.
Yeah.
And really, ready to drink right now. There's no sense in keeping this in your cellar for 300 or 400 years.
I always think the Sonoma Chardonnays have more of a kind of a citral character.
Oh yes, far more constrained, and Not a bitterness in the nose, but certainly a tart.
Having them just by themselves, do you prefer one versus the other?
Well, this I think could use a little more time in the bottle,
that's right.
and to just give it a little more evenness. Although it's drinkable now, I think with some very nice food.
I think that's the key. That with food, I'd probably prefer this, but by itself, if I'm
just sitting around for quaffing.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So now we're going to try 2 older wines. These are 7-year-old wines. The California wine we have is from Sonoma, and a white Burgundy, a Meursault, actually a Premier Cru Meursault. So this will be a chance for us to try the European style, which we expect to age very nicely. The question is, does the California wine age well at all? The California wine is significantly darker than Meursault, but it doesn't seem to me as if it's oxidized in any way.
Oh, no, these are totally vibrant wines. One of the problems in many cases, people open a bottle of wine and maybe just drink it within 5 minutes, or maybe even sometimes an hour later, and they really don't give them really enough time to open up and let the air get into them. Both are very, very exciting, but totally divergent tastes.
It's no longer that citrus note that we found in the younger one.
Very, very true. A wine that's ready to be consumed in balance and would really grace any table with a very, very dynamic nose, explosive, but not over oaked.
The French wine is just now beginning to resolve its awkward phases and beginning to show some of the bouquet, and I think it still has some fruitiness to it.
Very, very true. This wine will last another 10 or 15 years. Still closed in. I would prefer to hold it longer. Well, 2005 was a great year for Burgundy. I mean, it's really... Those things, what they tell me, can last for decades.
Yeah. I think that the California wines are in great shape at age 3 or 4 for drinking because of the fruitiness. And at age 3 or 4, I think a wine like this Meursault would have been very austere and not nearly as pleasant as the California wine. And today, we're sort of getting them at the point that they cross over on the chart. I don't think that the California wine is falling apart in any way, but if you were going to ask me which one I'd rather have 10 years from now, it would be the Burgundy.
Oh, there'd be no call. They used to say that when all the great wine minds came together, they'd end up talking about French white Burgundies. Because they are just, when you do get a great French white Burgundy, they're just explosive and elegant and filled with incredible flavors and tastes that are just uncomparable.
Yeah.